Your coach mug. I think we're live as well, so you can put that coach mug right in the. That's a. You know, I should take a screenshot.
There we go.
Brilliant. So, welcome everyone. This is episode 3 of Solo Shorts, and if this is the first time you've joining me on a live, Solo Shorts is half an hour live where I showcase guests who share their stories about their solopreneur stroke entrepreneur life, and it's really about inspiring you guys out there, solopreneurs who are thinking of starting off on their own, thinking of leaving the 9 to 5, or even whether you're thinking of experimenting with a side hustle. So yeah, hopefully you'll get a lot out of this. Today my guest is Donna Star from Boston, who is, as you can see on the screen, who is a coach, a business coach. And what I like to do is I like to let my guests introduce themselves because they do a far more better job than I do. But before we do that, Donna, I'm just going to say hi to a few people here. We've got people coming through on the chat. Hi, Freed, how you doing? And while you're in the chat as well, actually, let us know if, what you do, if you're a solopreneur, if you're thinking of leaving the 9 to 5. Hi, Sanyog, how you doing? Also in the chat, let me know where you're from, because I think it's always interesting. Last time we had people from all over the globe, and I thought that was super cool. So yeah, hello, everyone. So yeah, without further ado, let me introduce you to Donna Star. How you doing, Donna?
I'm great, and thank you for having me, and thank you for helping all the solopreneurs out there know that they're not alone, right? Because I think that's one of the hardest parts of being an entrepreneur. So, and welcome to everybody who joined. And my name's Donna Star, and I had a corporate career for 30 years. And I decided when my daughter graduated college, and I had been percolating on this. I think very rarely do people decide to be an entrepreneur without percolation time. And I decided to go back to school to become a coach. And I always wanted to give back and be able to share my experiences. And that's what I do now. And it is literally the greatest joy of my life to be able to do this for a career.
That's amazing. And I know we've had a chat before a couple of times as well. And one thing that I've not properly asked you, I probably briefly asked you, you've worked in corporate setting for 30 years. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you did then?
Yeah. I worked at a global, used to be called recruitment advertising agency. So we helped companies set up their brand, their advertising. We were not in a search firm. We weren't hiring the people. What we were creating the messages and the vehicles to hire. And then as the industry wore on, if anybody's on the call and they knew about monster.com, I was there at the very beginning of Monster. And then we really became much more of a software agency with career hubs and really being able to track all the hires and the media that performed well and the brand messaging. So full service ad agency that focused on human capital. That was my background.
Yeah.
The agency. And then I started out in account service and made it all the way up to senior vice president, running a region, running the largest account in the world. I ran sales in North America at one point. So there's probably no job that I didn't have in the agency. If you're there for long enough, you do a lot of jobs. So I felt very, very fortunate to have that corporate career.
Wow. So at what point then did you decide to leave and why? I think this is just a real, this question really is. It's like, why after 30 years?
So for everybody that's listening, I know that many of you are not happy in your corporate careers and you think you don't have choice because you have bills to pay, because you have kids, because you have a family, because you have a mortgage, because. And I was that person. I felt like I didn't have any choice. Of course, I could have gotten another job, and I did try that route about 12 years ago, but the grass is not always greener. And at the end of my corporate career, and Ash, you and I didn't talk about this, I had given my notice. We were owned by a private equity firm. And I said, I'm going to stay a year. I knew my daughter was graduating, and I knew that my big nut bills were gone. I was having problems digesting food. I went to an osteopath because I was not digesting food. Like everything in my body was out of alignment. And I knew the last gig that they offered me, which was to manage implementations of possibly new companies we were going to buy. I felt like when I got my offer letter, it felt like I was attending my own funeral. Like I felt like this is not how this is supposed to be. And I just made the decision that I was taking control of my life back. It's really hard in corporate, not impossible, to put up boundaries, to have a safe, to create work-life balance. And I think COVID taught us all that it's hard, but possible. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I knew, I knew for years that I wanted to leave, and I waited far too long.
Also, you were thinking about it for a while, and just to give everyone out there some context, you actually haven't left recently. You've had your own business for
several years. Yes.
Several years. Yeah. So, you've got quite a bit of experience within that. Someone asked a very good question, actually. It's an anonymous user, so I don't know who it is, but I'll put it on the screen there. What's the biggest challenge you faced moving to a solo entrepreneur career? It's a good question, and it's one question that I was going to ask anyway.
It's a good one. You know what? Find your people. I'll tell you, and I said it in the beginning, the reason that I love what Ash is doing is because it can feel very lonely, especially during COVID. If you think about it, people were stuck in their homes trying to run these businesses and they couldn't meet people. And so I found my tribe of people and made it not so lonely. I have to say the hardest part of being an entrepreneur for me was Monday mornings. Because, I used to wake up and boom, in my corporate career, my week was set, like I was like, oh my God, and I'm so busy, I'm so important. I'd had 20 meetings in a day and oh, wow, look at, and I didn't have to think much about my week, but you have to be very intentional, I think, when you're a solopreneur, like, or an entrepreneur, whatever term you use. But Monday mornings were hard for me. I was like, wow, I need to create the week that I want. I want to create the week I want. So the downtime of being an entrepreneur messed with my head a little bit. And Ash, let me know if this resonates with you at all, but it messed with my head because the switch from having your life managed versus you managing your life was much more difficult than I gave it credit for until I let it not be as difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It does resonate with me. So yeah, there's a lot at play there. It's the motivation, but you know what I actually found, and this was not when I became a solopreneur. I actually went from 10 years ago, I went from office job 9 to 5 to actually working from home for a company. And then the motivation side of it was the difficult part with regards to motivation was knowing when to stop, not knowing when to start for me, and everything kind of blurred. So I think that I found that the most challenging, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the other side of it, right? Like I have written extensively about, I have some workaholic tendencies. And in fact, my last column I wrote about that too. So yes, you have this downtime and you think, oh my God, I'm failing. And you don't let ease into your life. And then on the flip side is, when do you stop? Because there's no stop when you're an entrepreneur. So you have to create those boundaries. And that's part of the job. Hi, Leslie. That's part of the job that you have as an entrepreneur, is that you have to self-moderate, because you set your boundaries. You set intentions for how you want to run your business, right? You set goals for how you want to run your business. And I also have a coach, so that, that someone's helping me guide through this. You need your support system.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say hi to a few more people. Hi, Leslie, Rut, Terence. Thank you for making it here. Sanyog, Surya, thank you very much. So that's a nice little segue into, and I kind of missed that at the start in terms of the intro. I asked you what you used to do, but what is it that you do now? And I think it will help people understand, obviously, what you do now, but it also might inspire them of what the type of things that they need to think about as well, because I think your work kind of relates to that as well.
Yeah. So I love being a coach more than anything I've ever done in my life. And, when you come out of coaching school, everybody's like, what's your niche? What's your niche? It's like the biggest question. Like, coaches need to have a niche. And I knew I wanted to coach corporate people because I was a corporate person. But so I focus on corporate executives that I help them gain clarity, get unstuck. And those seem like very coachy words. Everybody needs support. Everybody has blind spots, including me, including you, and really working with executives to help them see that there are choices, that they can approach situations differently and they can give themselves more grace. A lot of people that I coach are very type A. They're super hard on themselves. Like, where is that getting you to be so hard on yourself? You know, I come from that school. Like, if you're not working yourself to the bone, then you're not doing it right. And the complete opposite is true. So I don't know if that helps. I mean, I have a very broad, I coach women, I coach men, I coach early career, and I coach senior career. So for me, it's just about re-engineering the way you view your corporate career. And it is my honor to be able to help people. I mean, when you come out of college or university and you're in your 20s, at least in the US, the pressure on you is intense. Your parents spent all this money to send you to university. They want you to like get a job, get promoted, live on your own, get off the payroll, and, you know, figure out how to do corporate. And we don't teach 20-somethings how to do life, never mind corporate. So I spend a lot of time in that realm. And then for senior executives, just untying all the, I'll just say, negative voices in your head, right? Like, there's a lot of negative rhetoric about getting ahead in corporate. And mine is, just doesn't have to be so hard. And that really is my message. It just doesn't have to be as hard as we make it.
Yeah. So you talked about executives at companies that you worked with, but we were introduced actually by a mutual friend. So, and he actually didn't talk about you specifically a lot, but he used to talk about the value that you gave to him and how it helped him start off his own business. Do you, in terms of your clients, do you work with a lot of solopreneurs yourself, or is it?
I do actually. That's the thing, is I do work with a lot of solopreneurs, and because I am one and I understand, you know, with that specific client, which we won't name any names, was in between, should I go back to corporate or should I stay on my own? And there's some pull about the security of a regular paycheck and benefits and the belief in yourself to go on your own. And so first you have to work on the belief in yourself, right? This stuff doesn't manifest and come to you. It does when you put out the right message, like, Ash, you know, people should want to work with you because look what you do for the world, you know? But in the beginning, your belief in yourself has to be the reason that people show up. And so this particular client started showing up on LinkedIn, and, you know, magically he started networking, and his business is really completely on the other side now.
Absolutely. You know, that it just made me think of an interesting point there. Having that mindset and nurturing that mindset and being ready to do it yourself is great when you've got the luxury of time. Sadly and unfortunately, there are also a few people out there that I actually lost their job, and it happened to me 10 years ago. How does one, if they've decided in their head, right, okay, I've lost my job, I've tried finding work, I've always toyed with the idea of working for myself, but now's the time, but I have nowhere to start. I don't know where to start.
We talked about this. Yeah. So where do you start?
We briefly talked about it, didn't we? Yeah. So what advice would you give them?
So the advice that I would give, and I see some people that I've worked with on the phone, on the call, is start small. Start with your immediate circle. Networking is probably one of the biggest things that people are uncomfortable with, but it needs to happen. So if you lose your job on a Tuesday, you know, take your licks, feel bad for yourself for a day or two, dust off, get back in the ring. And the way you do that is go into your tribe again. So for people that I coach, it may be, hey, send a note to some people that you used to work with and say, hey, I'm, you know, currently unemployed. I would love to connect with you over a cup of coffee, you know, now that people can see each other. But there's always a place to start. Once you get over the obviously the horrible feelings of being let go or redundant or whatever the case may be, you have a tribe, you just haven't tapped into it. And some people are uncomfortable with that. And some of the people I see on this live, you've done it. You send a note to somebody. One connection can lead you to 100 other. Look at how you and I met, Ash, through somebody else. We didn't know each other.
Right.
And that's where I'd start. Don't make a list of 20 things. Make a list of 2 or 3 things. That's another coaching thing, is don't live in overwhelm. Start someplace. Start with the connections that you know right up front, so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. I don't know if that helps. It
does, yeah. And I think it's really helpful to advise that, because when that happens, well, all you want to do in your head is just cut out that horrible history, because most of the time it is a horrible experience, and you feel like you're moving forward, so you have to look forward, but there's nothing ahead. But sometimes the answers are behind you, right? And all those connections that you did make. So I think that's brilliant advice. Leslie had I'm going to just flash her. It's not even a question, but I think it's an important point, is the imposter syndrome. A lot of people go through that. I go through it today as well. I want to get a little bit personal, but not in a negative way. I want to find out a little bit more about what was your mindset when you switched. And were you already gearing up for working for yourself? But even then, what was that process like for you? Like that imposter syndrome, whether it's imposter syndrome or the mental and emotional challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome, I just did a workshop on imposter syndrome for the tribe of people that I work with. And imposter syndrome, I just want to put a lid on, or blow the lid a little bit off imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome works when you're out of your comfort zone. So kudos to you for being out of your comfort zone. So don't be so hard on yourself for having imposter syndrome. It means you're doing something you've probably never done before. So and if you can recognize that and become aware of it, then it becomes more of a friend than a foe. I know that seems like I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm not. Everybody, Maya Angelou writes about, I've written 11 books and someone's going to find me out. Everybody experiences imposter syndrome. Over 80% is actually the number, but I think it's close to 100. So having said that, how did I get past it? It's with me every day. I see my imposter syndrome sitting with me, or fear is really the other word for it, sitting with me every day. Just do the thing. You know what? The worst thing that imposter syndrome can do for you is keep you paralyzed. Keep moving. Keep taking a step. If you want to work out and you say, well, I can't go to the gym. Everybody looks like a goddess there and I'm not a goddess. How do you think they got there? They took some steps. Go walk around your neighborhood. So I know I'm oversimplifying it, but the only way to stay ahead of imposter syndrome, really, well, there's a lot of ways, because there's actually 5 different archetypes for imposter syndrome, is to not feel like you're an imposter.
Yeah.
The simplest tip I can give you. I don't know, Ash, how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I still go through some of it, but I think it does get easier for me. It's like almost those daily habits, and just building those daily habits of actually, this is normal. It's all right to feel like this, and that's and LinkedIn has helped me a lot, actually, because I write about it a lot, and that's quite therapeutic. So and I know it's therapeutic for me, but I also see it resonating with a lot of people. And then that alone tells me that's a normal feeling. That's a normal human feeling. So embrace it. Yeah.
I mean, it is probably one of the biggest challenges for being an entrepreneur, but I would suggest that it's also one of the biggest challenges in corporate, in life, right? Is that everybody goes through some version of imposter syndrome. And the reason that I like what you just said, Ash, is imposter syndrome can't continue to thrive if you talk about it. It's like shame. If anybody here follows Brene Brown, shame and vulnerability, so let's take your losing a job. You don't want to reach out to anybody because you feel like everybody's going to judge you. What a loser you are for losing your job. Well, 80 million people, I'm making up that number, have lost their jobs. You're not alone. Once you believe you're alone and you isolate yourself, then you're letting imposter syndrome or fear win. Once you talk about it the way you do, Ash, it doesn't win anymore. We're all human.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just say hi to people in the chat. Thanks again, Leslie, for that question. Raheem is saying, I think from a previous point, very well said, Donna, connecting is key. Yeah, I think that's an important one, Raheem. It's like those connections, because especially these days, when I started over 10 years ago, there were less online groups and things like, LinkedIn and other social media platform. Especially as a solopreneur, I think it's really important because that loneliness can get to you. So it's important that you bounce off other people, even if it's not for business. It's just bounce off people, just ideas, and thrash out ideas and stuff. So that's really important. So I think again, another thing that I wanted to ask you as well, Donna, we briefly spoke about this off air, was when you first started as a solopreneur, how did you manage being a single mum and starting your own business? Actually, no, let me correct myself. You were a single mum before, right? So
I was a single mom starting from the ages of my kids being 3 and 6. And so they're 27 and 24 now. So they're flown and grown. But it was not something I gave a lot of thought to, right? Because I had no choice. I'm a single mom. I need to make money. And there are some people that know me from being a single mom in corporate. I never really let it define me. And I'm curious, even to this day, why I didn't make that more a part of the person I was. But I almost fought against it. Like, regardless of being a single mom, I'm not going to let that get in the way of my corporate career. So I actually went way over the other side to prove that I was just as good as any man and didn't have any need for any special treatment because I was single mom. So I actually think I went completely opposite of leaning into being a single mom.
That's amazing. Shivani saying, wow, yeah, and that's exactly what I think. A question from Hasneen, if I've pronounced that right, it relates to probably this question. How do you balance your work life and family life? How did you have a support network while you were at work and your kids were probably at home at school growing up in the corporate world?
Yeah, I definitely did. It wasn't until they were a little older that I got a nanny because I was flying and traveling. And I think some people associate the word nanny with that I was wealthy, or it was a luxury. It was a necessity for me because I needed someone with my kids when I couldn't be, and I needed reliability. So yes, they were in some daycare programs, but I had a live-in nanny for many of the years. I want to just address that work-life balance. If somebody, I think it was Hasneen.
Yes, Hasneen, yeah.
And I would say my first question to you, we were coaching, is how do you want your life to be? How do you want to balance your work and your life? Because you have to sort of, and we don't have to, but I think it's a good place to start because you have the power. The companies are going to ask you for more and more and more. Can you go to this meeting? Can you do this? Can you do that? You're the only one who can say no. Your company's not going to be like, oh, we have to worry about your work-life balance. They may care about it, but you ultimately are the person that has to make that distinction. And nowhere was that more prevalent than during COVID, right? When your work and your life were in the same place. But just because you're home and you have your Slack channel on at 7 doesn't mean that you need to respond. So my first question to you is, how do you want it to be?
Mm-hmm. I think I've struggled with that more so, I suppose, when I wasn't working for myself. Mobiles were around, but there wasn't that culture of being on all the time. I've struggled with that working for myself. Do you feel like there is a switch? Do you are more on all the time working for yourself versus corporate, or there wasn't that much of a difference?
I mean, look, workaholism doesn't just disappear because you decide to go on your own. And in fact, the hustle, which you use that word for that side hustle, can be your biggest enemy. Like, it's never enough. I need to stop. I need to stop. And I talk a lot about in my practice that ease and space gives you actually more ability to grow your business. If you're like this all the time, like, I need to get more business, I have to, you're not like breathing. I know like breathing is like basic. Everybody thinks they do it, but they do really not a great job of it. So yeah, I think it's hard, but setting boundaries is pretty key. Like, if you want to have a family dinner, you stop at 6. Like, you are in control of that when you're an entrepreneur. And working 3 more hours at night, does that drive your business, or is it driving an emptiness in you that you're trying to fill? So getting really hyper self-aware about why you're doing the things you're doing is really where my work begins, is raising your level of self-awareness. And so, Ash, if like we were working together, I would say, what are you giving up when you work those extra hours? I mean, you're giving up seeing your young children. Yeah. What's that worth to you? What are you losing as a result of that? Not to get deep and serious with you, but it all starts.
No, I know. And you know what? We, for everyone out there, me and Donna talked about this, whether we should do a live coaching session where Donna was going to coach me, and I backed out last minute. So, but I think if let us know if anyone wants to.
I think Ash is getting a little red in the cheeks. I don't know if anybody sees that.
No, I think it's just the light flickering.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't mean to do that, but I mean, it does start with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're an entrepreneur, you're like, who's causing this stress on me? Didn't I leave my corporate job so I didn't have to do this? Or is this one thing that I want to take from my corporate job? Like, what are your motivations?
Yeah. So if anyone in the chat wants to see Donna on again, grilling me, that's not the right word, I know, but let us know.
I would love to coach you, Ash. See?
Yeah. Donna, unfortunately, we're out of time. I don't know, we can speak for ages, and we have previously. I just want to shout out to a few more people. Michael, good to have you here. I would have loved that live coaching session. Okay, so maybe it will happen. And I think there's someone here, but they might have got their privacy settings switched off. But if I feel like it's someone that you might know, but they just come up as a LinkedIn user. Donna is the best mum I've ever seen, and has always been my mentor, i.e. motherhood. So,
well, thank you, anonymous person. Hopefully you're not my child saying that. Maybe you are. I don't know, I'm joking.
But it's been brilliant having you on, Donna. I've really enjoyed that, and there was lots of value there for people out there. If people want to carry on this conversation with you, connect with you, obviously they can find you on LinkedIn. Are you anywhere else? The website or email?
I have. Thanks for asking. Yes. The best, I'm on Instagram at DStar Consultants. I'm on Facebook, DStar Coaching and Consulting. And I am also have a website, DStar Consultants, which is under construction. I'm doing a new brand launch, hopefully by the end of the year. So, and I'm on LinkedIn. So,
and you've got a newsletter as well, haven't you? Because I was signed. Well, I got that newsletter because you obviously promoted this live through it. So and I actually went through it, and I found it really, really interesting and fascinating. So yeah, that's worth signing up to. And I think anonymous person was Andrea. Is that right? Do you know?
That's Andrea. She helped me raise my kids, so I couldn't have done it without her. That's my tribe. When I
there you go.
When I talk about being an entrepreneur, I mean, how about being a mom? How about you need a tribe throughout your life. We're not meant to do this alone. So the word solopreneur, as much as it's true, it's also, we want to make sure, and I think Ash, you do a great job of this. We want to create a tribe for you so that you don't feel alone.
I think that's a great point that you finished on. It's like, solopreneur life isn't really solo, and it doesn't have to be. And especially now with what you can do on the internet. I talk like I'm from 20 years ago, but and this is all new. But it's so important. Make use of all those communities out there and connections out there, and just having these types of calls really help. So thanks again. Someone said great session. I agree. So thanks very much, Donna.
Thank you all.
And we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Take care, guys. Bye.